Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tombstone Tourist. This week, I'm at the National Memorial Park in Fairfax County, Virginia. This large, well-manicured cemetery is in Falls Church, Virginia, about 20 miles west of our nation's capital. While I was researching this cemetery, I discovered that it has a unique history with the now defunct Abbey Mausoleum that was once located in nearby Arlington, Virginia. The Abbey Mausoleum was built in 1924 and was once a luxurious burial place where some of the area's most notable people were entombed. One of the more notable people buried here was Sally Pickett, the wife of Civil War General George Pickett. In the 1950s and 60s, the mausoleum fell victim to years of mismanagement and neglect. It was vandalized and its crypt was desecrated. The management company finally went bankrupt and the mausoleum was abandoned and fell into a further state of disrepair, and it was scheduled for demolition. In 1971, prior to demolition, those remaining occupied crypts were reburied in several area cemeteries. 174 of those disinterred remains were buried here at the National Memorial Park. Sally Pickett was not reinterred here. She was finally taken to Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia, and reburied next to her husband. Being located just outside of Washington, D.C., this 169-acre cemetery is the final resting place of a number of notable political figures. Today, we're going to visit one of those political figures who gained notoriety during the administrations of President Richard Nixon and President Ronald Reagan. Here is the grave of journalist and political consultant Lyn Nofziger. Franklin Lyn Nofziger was born on July 8, 1924 in Bakersfield, California. He was raised in a relatively conservative family, and in high school he worked on the school's newspaper, where he could express his conservative views. After graduating from high school, he served a stint in the United States Army before enrolling in San Diego State University, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in journalism. After graduating from college, he took a job with Copley Newspapers. For the next 16 years, he worked as a reporter, editor, and as the company's Washington correspondent. Lyn's entry into politics came in 1966, when he was named Press Secretary for Ronald Reagan's California gubernatorial campaign. With Reagan's election, Lyn remained with the new governor for the next 2 years, serving as Governor Reagan's Director of Communications. When Richard Nixon was elected president in 1968, Lyn left Reagan and took a job in the Nixon White House, serving as the Deputy Assistant to the President for Congressional Affairs. He also served as the Deputy Chairman of Communications for the Republican National Committee. When Nixon ran for re-election in 1972, Nofzinger served as the Executive Director of the California Committee to re-elect the President. White House counsel John Dean later wrote that Nofzinger worked very closely with one of Nixon's most trusted advisors, Charles Colson, who we visited in last week's video. Dean claimed that it was Nofzinger and Colson who developed what was known as the Nixon Enemies List. It was during the Nixon re-election campaign that the Watergate Scandal broke, which eventually led to Nixon resigning the presidency. While Nofzinger remained with the Nixon White House throughout the re-election campaign, there was never any evidence that he was even remotely involved in any aspect of the Watergate Scandal. With the resignation of President Nixon, Nofzinger went to work for the campaign of President Gerald Ford, who assumed the office following the Nixon resignation. When President Jimmy Carter defeated Ford, Nofzinger returned to his old boss, Ronald Reagan, and began laying the groundwork for Reagan's 1980 run for the White House. When the Reagan campaign shifted into high gear, Lyn served as Reagan's deputy chair for campaign finance. And when Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter and moved into the Oval Office, Many thought that it would be Nofzinger that would be named Reagan's press secretary, but he declined, and the job went to James Brady instead. Early in the Reagan administration, Nofzinger assumed the post of assistant to the president for political affairs, a position that he held for about a year before moving to the job of senior consultant in charge of the 1984 Reagan-Bush re-election campaign. It was during the Reagan administration that Lyn Nofziger is best remembered. He always strived to work behind the scenes, but that changed on March 30th, 1981, when John Hinkley attempted to assassinate President Reagan as he exited the Washington Hilton Hotel. Hinkley fired 6 shots, striking the president, Secret Service Agent Tim McCarthy, Washington police officer Thomas Delahanty, and critically wounding White House Press Secretary James Brady. With Vice President George Bush on board Air Force Two en route to Austin, Texas, Secretary of State Haig stepped before the microphones and boldly proclaimed, "I'm in control here." That statement was taken largely out of context by the press. Haig was, in fact, directing the White House crisis management team until Vice President Bush could return to the White House. Still, some people in the White House thought that Haig's statement was a power grab, and with Press Secretary James Brady being critically wounded, they turned to Nofzinger to handle any further press briefings. Nofzinger eventually left the White House and worked as a lobbyist. In 1987, he was investigated for violating the Ethics in Government Act when he lobbied on behalf of a defense contractor named WedTech. The Ethics Act prohibited former government officials from lobbying their former offices for a period of 2 years. Nofzinger claimed that because he had not lobbied the Office of Political Affairs, he had not violated any law. The government, on the other hand, claimed that the intent of the law was to prohibit lobbying any government office. Nofzinger was indeed indicted and convicted, but the conviction was overturned. The government appealed the ruling all the way to the United States Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of Nofzinger and refused to reinstate the conviction. Lyn Nofziger retired from politics and devoted his time to writing. In addition to writing his memoirs, he also wrote 4 Western novels. He once said that his Tackett series of Western novels was a tribute to his longtime friend, Louis L'Amour. Lyn Nofziger passed away at his home here in Falls Church, Virginia, on March 27, 2006, from the complications of kidney cancer. He was 81 years old. Normally, I'd end this video here, but as I was walking to the car, I happened upon the grave of Major League Baseball player Clay Kirby. Over his 7 years in the major leagues, Clay played for the San Diego Padres, Cincinnati Reds, and Montreal Expos. As a pitcher, his record was 75 wins and 104 losses with 1,061 strikeouts and an ERA of 3.84. Following his baseball career, Clay lived in San Diego, where he was active in a number of charities. He lived in San Diego until 1983, when he returned to his native Virginia and worked as a self-employed securities broker. Clay suffered a heart attack and passed away at his home here in Falls Church on October 11, 1991. He was only 43 years old. I must say this was kind of special for me, as I remember seeing Clay pitch in person back in 1975 when he was a member of the Big Red Machine. After the game, he and George Foster were kind enough to sign my scorecard. I still have those autographs, and I will always remember his kindness. Now, I am going to end this video here at the National Memorial Park in Falls Church, Virginia. How many of you remember Lyn Nofzinger or Clay Kirby? If you do, please share your memories with us in the comments. Now, until next time, please remember, life is a wonderful journey. Be sure to take time and enjoy it. And I'll see you down the road. So long, everybody.